Millions of Australians are facing an anxious wait tonight.
A cyber attack against telecommunications giant Optus.
One of the biggest cyber attacks in Australian history.
A distressing development in Medibank's cyber attack.
All of its 3.7 million customers at risk.
Every 7 minutes, a cybercrime is reported.
The threats are getting stealthier and the volume is increasing.
Last financial year, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre received 76,000 reports of cybercrime, a 13% jump on the year before. The most common crimes? Fraud, followed by online shopping and online banking-related incidents. The cost is rising too, businesses losing up to $88,000 per attack. Right now, 200,000 Aussie home and office routers are at risk of being taken over by hackers.
On the whole, they're serious and they're organised criminals. It might be a romance and dating fraud. It might be selling vehicles that don't exist. It might be phishing. It might be business email compromise.
The most destructive cybercrime is ransomware, where attackers hack into a network, steal sensitive data, and demand a ransom for its release. But the biggest emerging threat? Cyber warfare.
It is cyber criminals, but it's not just cyber criminals. You know, we're seeing more state actors and we're seeing more cross-pollination between state actors and cyber criminals.
Russia's use of cyber warfare during its invasion of Ukraine described as profound and new.
Unfortunately, there's lots of foreign powers seeking to do us harm, whether that's for statecraft, whether that's to steal intellectual property or other government secrets. Identifying who they are is the really hard bit. It's really difficult to determine who's got their fingers on the keyboard at any one time.
The government urging everyone to up their game.
Well, it's a huge wake-up call, and companies need to get their act together.
What we want Australia to be is not the low-hanging fruit. We want the cyber criminals to go, it's too hard to attack Australian businesses and people, I'm going to go elsewhere.
And Catherine Manstead is the Director of Cyber Intelligence at CyberCX, and she joins us now. Catherine, we are hearing so much about cybercrime right now. Why is Australia proving to be so popular with hackers?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons. The first one's the obvious one. We are a relatively wealthy country. We have deep pockets, and ultimately cyber criminals are out to make money. It's one of the biggest economies in the world, cybercrime, after the US and China. So they know where to go to make a quick buck. The other reason, of course, is that in Australia, we're incredibly digitally connected, and that's a great thing. It's a great thing for our economy and our society, but it also makes us more vulnerable. And the last point is, unfortunately, we still are a very permissive environment to cyber criminals. Most of the attacks that happen are not sophisticated. They're criminals grabbing low-hanging fruit and exploiting Australian organisations and ultimately Australian citizens and consumers in order to make money from their criminal enterprises. For most of us, though, there are things we can do to level up our cybersecurity, and a lot of it, luckily, is automated by our phone once we get the settings right. So simple things. Make sure you update your phone. When iOS pings and said it's ready for an update, it's ready for an update. Often they're really important security updates. When your apps need to be updated, have them automatically updating. If you've finished with an app on your phone, don't leave that app waste lying around. Bin it, delete it, and don't download apps onto your phone that are a bit dodgy, that you know you probably shouldn't have, because that's where criminals like to play as well.
Catherine, a growing number of businesses reported having been hit with ransomware attacks. What should they do when that happens? Should they pay the ransom?
Look, I don't think that's the most important question, frankly. The most important question is, how do you stop being the low-hanging fruit for cyber criminals? And most of the incidents that the Australian Cybersecurity Centre responds to are because organisations haven't patched in time. So the key message has to be stop the low-hanging fruit. Patch, make sure your staff are phishing trained. Don't let the ransomware actors get in there in the first place, and then if they do, be resilient so that they're not holding your business to ransom. Have good backups, test them, make sure that they're working, make sure you're not holding sensitive Australians' data that you don't need to be holding, and when you are, hold it in a really secure, protected way.
Yeah, the report says that Russia has made cyberspace a battleground. It sounds very dramatic, but what does that actually mean in practical terms?
Yeah, I mean, Russia has shown really that the gloves are off in cyberspace when it comes to nations using cyber attacks as a tool to interfere with the sovereignty of other countries. So it's normalised targeting critical infrastructure in cyberspace. Critical infrastructure is stuff like your energy grid. It might have a military purpose, but it's also absolutely essential to citizen health, well-being and livelihood. The other thing we've seen with Russia is an unholy alliance with the cyber criminal underworld. Russia uses criminals to achieve its cyber offensive activities. It often greenlights cyber criminals to target the West as well and others who are perceived as unfriendly to Russia. That's a conflict that's far away from Australia geographically, but there are other countries closer to home that also see cyber attacks as a handy way for them to achieve objectives that they can't achieve by diplomacy alone.
Well, Catherine, it's been a real eye-opener. I will never look at my router the same way. But thank you so much for your time tonight.
My pleasure.